Hello, students, teachers, parents, history nerds. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Nutshelled History, where we lay out the facts, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Today, we are going to continue our United States history series by looking at America in the 1980s and 1990s. Don't forget that there's a link for a fill-in-the-blanks worksheet in the description. I just ask that you like and subscribe. I apologize for any mispronunciations ahead of time. I do my best. Okay, we will start with the conservative movement surges. In the late 20th century, American politics was basically a tug-of-war between two teams. The Democrats, aka liberals, who wanted the government to be a life coach for the nation, and the Republicans, aka conservatives, who thought the government should stick to refereeing and leave the heavy lifting to private businesses and individuals. Liberals backed social programs, international cooperation, and the idea that the government could fix stuff, while conservatives were all about tax cuts, smaller government, and a military strong enough to make Rambo blush. The 1960s and 70s set the stage for the conservative movement known as the New Right, fueled by a cocktail of Vietnam War disillusionment, counterculture burnout, and the general chaos of Watergate, oil crises, and the Iran hostage situation. Throw in a stagnant economy, and suddenly conservatives were blaming liberals for taxing too much, spending even more, and coming up with programs no one wanted to pay for. Enter Reverend Jerry Falwell and his moral majority in 1979, rallying around traditional family values and worried that the youth were trading textbooks for tie-dye. This movement set the stage for the Republican Party's star player, Ronald Reagan, a charismatic former actor and California governor, to swoop in and defeat Jimmy Carter in the 1980 election. Reagan promised prosperity, patriotism, and enough optimism to make even Eeyore crack a smile, ushering in a new conservative era that redefined American politics. The Reagan era, President Reagan's economic policies, affectionately, or not so affectionately, dubbed Reaganomics, were based on supply-side economics, a fancy way of saying if you lower taxes, people will work harder and spend more. In theory, this would make the economy so happy it would grow faster than weeds in spring. Congress went along with it, passing the Economic Recovery Act of 1981, which slashed taxes by 25% over 3 years, basically a treat-yourself moment for taxpayers. Reagan also unleashed deregulation on industries like airlines and telecommunications, saying, "Fly free, talk cheap." Meanwhile, he packed federal courts with conservative judges, ensuring future rulings would lean more right than a wobbly table. But the economy threw a tantrum from 1980 to 1982 with a severe recession. By 1983, it dusted itself off, bringing lower inflation and higher gross national product. However, the rich got richer, the poor got poorer, and Reagan's defense spending binges sent the budget deficit ballooning. The national debt skyrocketed, and the Savings and Loan (S&L) crisis of 1989 saw nearly 1,000 banks collapse, forcing the government to bail out depositors, like cleaning up after a financial frat party. Other challenges kept Reagan busy. American students flunked standardized tests, sparking a push for school vouchers, or exit tickets to private schools. Meanwhile, a mysterious and deadly disease called AIDS emerged, becoming the leading killer of men aged 20 to 40 by the end of the decade. Despite all this, Reagan charmed his way into a landslide re-election in 1984, proving that the Gipper still had the magic. However, his coattails weren't long enough to bring Congress along for the ride. Democrats held on to the House of Representatives, keeping Reagan's agenda on a leash. The Cold War ends. Under Reagan, the U.S. decided to flex its military muscles like a bodybuilder at the gym, launching the biggest peacetime military buildup in history. Reagan figured the Soviet Union couldn't keep up with Uncle Sam's defense spending spree, and he was right. He even pitched the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, a sci-fi-esque plan to zap incoming missiles with lasers. Critics nicknamed it Star Wars, but Reagan clearly saw himself as the Jedi in this Cold War saga. Reagan also went global with his anti-communist efforts, backing rebellions like Nicaragua's Contras, whose counter-revolutionary name sounded cool, but whose tactics often sparked controversy. Meanwhile, over in the USSR, Mikhail Gorbachev stepped into power in 1985 with a plan to save the crumbling Soviet economy. He rolled out glasnost, openness, and perestroika reform, or as some might say, let's loosen up and clean house. Realizing he couldn't keep pace with Reagan's defense spending, Gorbachev opted to play nice. The two leaders signed a nuclear arms pact and began scaling back the apocalyptic arsenals, making room for less catastrophic hobbies. Then came the grand finale. The Cold War curtain dropped. The Berlin Wall went down in 1989. Communism unraveled across Eastern Europe like a badly knit sweater. And by 1991, the Soviet Union split into 15 independent states. Cue the end credits. Cold War, the movie, had wrapped. The Middle East, however, brought more drama. A tragic truck bomb killed 241 U.S. Marines in Lebanon, and the U.S. kept butting heads with Libya's Muammar al-Gaddafi, who seemed to have support terrorism on his daily to-do list. On a brighter note, Reagan scored an early win when Iran released 52 American hostages minutes into his presidency. A timing coincidence that made Carter's farewell even more awkward. But Reagan's second term hit a major snag with the Iran-Contra affair. In a plot twist straight out of a spy thriller, the U.S. sold weapons to Iran, despite swearing off deals with terrorists in exchange for help freeing American hostages. The money from those sales then funded the Contras in Nicaragua, violating a congressional ban. The scandal led to convictions for several top officials and left Reagan doing his best "who me" impression. Still, his approval ratings survived because, well, Reagan, a new era in foreign policy. Under President George H.W. Bush, the U.S. was basically the world's busybody, sticking its nose into everything. Bush continued the war on drugs, and in December 1989 decided it was time to give Panama a little help by sending in U.S. troops to arrest its dictator, Manuel Noriega. Noriega was convicted of drug trafficking and sentenced to 40 years in an American prison, a sentence that was probably longer than he expected, given his profession. Bush also had to deal with some international drama. In 1989, Chinese tanks rolled into Tiananmen Square and crushed pro-democracy protests, killing hundreds and sending many activists to jail. The U.S. wasn't thrilled about that and decided to punish China by canceling arms sales. Nothing says we're mad like a canceled shopping spree. Meanwhile, in South Africa, the pressure from global economic sanctions and political pressure finally convinced the white minority government to end apartheid. After 25 years in prison, Nelson Mandela was freed and went on to become South Africa's president in 1994, proving that you can't keep a good man down or out of office. Then there was Somalia, a country embroiled in civil war with a side order of famine. In 1992, Bush sent U.S. Marines to deliver food and establish a ceasefire. It was like the world's most dramatic food delivery service, only with more guns and less pizza. But Bush's biggest international headache came when Iraq's dictator, Saddam Hussein, decided to invade Kuwait in August 1990. Hussein had his eyes on Kuwait's oil and wanted to flex his muscles in the region. Bush wasn't having it and quickly rallied an international coalition to demand Hussein withdraw. When he didn't, the U.S. and its allies launched Operation Desert Storm in January 1991. By the end of February, Iraqi troops had hightailed it out of Kuwait. In short, Bush said, "Not on my watch, buddy." Fast forward to 1992, when the American public, tired of the same old, decided it was time for a new face in the White House. Enter Bill Clinton, a governor from Arkansas who was charismatic enough to make people forget about Bush. Clinton, along with Texas billionaire H. Ross Perot, who ran as an independent, took on Bush in the 1992 election and came out on top, making it clear that even presidents need a good campaign manager. Once in office, Clinton had to deal with conflicts in places like Somalia and Haiti, but things got even trickier when civil war broke out in Bosnia. Bosnian Serbs decided ethnic cleansing was the way to go, and Clinton, realizing the situation was getting out of hand, called in NATO to bomb Serbian positions. This brought about a ceasefire, but peace in the Balkans proved as elusive as a Wi-Fi signal in the middle of nowhere. Then, in the Middle East, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict flared up again. Clinton attempted to broker a peace deal, but let's just say it was like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube. Pretty complicated and not exactly successful. Meanwhile, the U.S. got on the radar of Al-Qaeda, which launched a series of attacks on American targets at home and abroad, making it clear that international diplomacy sometimes comes with a side of danger. Lastly, Clinton dove into the world of economic globalization and free trade, pushing the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, with Mexico and Canada, and signing 270 other trade deals, because who doesn't love a good free trade agreement? While some Americans applauded the lower costs from free trade, others were less thrilled about losing jobs to other countries, like it was an uninvited guest at the party. Either way, Clinton's presidency kept the U.S. busy both at home and abroad, proving that sometimes the world really is a full-time job. Clinton in the 1990s. Early in his presidency, Clinton was all about tackling domestic issues because, as every politician knows, home is where the votes are. He signed the Family Medical Leave Act, which ensured most full-time employees could take unpaid leave for personal or family medical reasons. It's like giving workers the gift of not going to work without the paycheck to go with it. Clinton also tackled gun control by overseeing the Brady Bill, which introduced a 5-day waiting period for handgun sales. It wasn't exactly a ban on guns, but it did add a little bit of suspense to the whole buying a gun process, like a shopping spree with a little more drama. But Clinton's big-ticket item was healthcare reform, and he didn't tackle it alone. His wife Hillary took the reins with a task force to figure out how to guarantee healthcare for all Americans. Unfortunately, Congress wasn't on board, so the whole plan went from let's get healthcare for everyone to, well, that's a no-go, faster than a health insurance claim rejection. Then came the 1994 midterm elections, and that's when things got spicy. Newt Gingrich, a Georgia congressman, took the lead in opposition to Clinton and introduced the Contract with America, which was basically a list of things to do if the Republicans were given the keys to the House and Senate. The plan focused on attacking big government and emphasizing patriotism, and it worked. Republicans swept the House, Senate, and most state governorships. It was like a political tidal wave, and Clinton had to hang on for dear life. But even though Clinton was busy with policy, he couldn't dodge scandals for long. One involved some questionable investments the Clintons had made, which led Special Prosecutor Kenneth Starr to investigate for 7 years. Spoiler alert, Starr didn't find anything incriminating, but he did stumble upon a juicy detail: the president's relationship with a White House intern. Clinton denied the affair, but when he admitted under oath that he might have been a little less than truthful, Starr called for impeachment. The House went along with it, impeaching Clinton on charges of perjury and obstruction of justice. But when it went to trial in the Senate, Clinton was acquitted faster than you can say, oops. Meanwhile, technology was changing the world faster than Clinton could dodge scandal. The computer, which started out in 1946 as a giant, room-filling monstrosity, had evolved into personal computers by the 1980s. These compact wonders weren't just transforming business and industry. They were revolutionizing medicine and creating a brand new field called biotechnology, where technology gets all up in the business of living organisms. It's as sci-fi as it sounds. Then, the information age hit. Satellites were circling the Earth like space-age nosy neighbors, and suddenly, communication was faster than ever. Cell phones became mobile, which meant you could talk to anyone, anytime, except when your battery was dead. And then there was the internet, which allowed people to send emails, watch cat videos, and order pizza without leaving their couches. The 90s were a technological paradise, changing commerce, education, and entertainment, and making everyone's grandma wonder what a Google was. Alright, I don't know what a Google is, but I do know what a recap is. In the late 20th century, American politics was a tug-of-war between the Democrats, who wanted a government that acted as a life coach, and Republicans, who preferred a referee that left the heavy lifting to businesses and individuals. The rise of the conservative New Right in the 1970s, spurred by disillusionment with the Vietnam War and Watergate, set the stage for Ronald Reagan's presidency. Reaganomics, a mix of tax cuts and deregulation, aimed to boost the economy, but led to growing income inequality and a ballooning national debt. On the foreign front, Reagan ramped up military spending, faced off with the Soviet Union, and had a messy entanglement in the Iran-Contra affair. After Reagan, George H.W. Bush kept the U.S. busy internationally, intervening in Panama, the Gulf War, and Somalia. Bill Clinton then took the reins, pushing for healthcare reform, tackling scandals, and diving into free trade with NAFTA. Meanwhile, the rapid rise of technology, from personal computers to the internet, transformed life in the 90s, making communication faster than ever, but leaving some people scrambling to figure out what the internet actually was. There you have it, folks. That is America in the 1980s and 1990s nutshelled. My vote is that 90s music is the best music. Do you agree? Let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for stopping by Nutshelled History. Now go all nuts on those like and subscribe buttons for me. See y'all next time on Nutshelled History.